Open the rad cap and make sure there's no oil floating in there. Motor oil could be leaking through the head gasket and getting in your antifreeze, and the transmission automatic cooler that's in your radiator could be leaking and putting transmission oil in your antifreeze. Check the color of the oil. Being black is no big deal, but just make sure it's not coffee colored or creamy colored or white. That means you've maybe got head gasket problems too, or cracked head. Check the tranny oil. Well, if it's bright red and nice and clear and doesn't have like a burnt smell to it, that's good news. It's hard to tell about batteries, but you can maybe get an idea looking at one. Sometimes they're dated. Now, most important, the engine. Start it up and listen to it. Listen for ticks, clicks, growling sounds, like could be a water pump or an alternator. Put your hand on the motor and see how smooth it runs. If it's got a bad cylinder, it'll be going a little bit and a little bit of shake. You don't want that. If you can see the radiator, it's most important to check the bottom part, because that's the part that salt and everything rots out. So you want to check, your air conditioner radiator and your engine radiator. And for leakage too. Now the tailpipe is important too. There should always be something in there, a tiny bit. But if you do that and there's lots of black, and if it's not a diesel, that means it's not running right and it's burning way too much. Start it up and turn the wheels all the way one direction. Take a peek underneath, turn the wheels all the way the other direction, take a peek underneath. So if it's front wheel drive, what you're looking for is the condition of the CV boots, or constant velocity boots, for cracks and grease coming out, because that's an extra expense. Check your struts or shocks for oily condition. That means leakage. That's bad, gotta get them changed soon. Check your transmission from the side view and underneath to see if it's leaking. Check brake flex hoses for cracks in them. Crawl underneath and look for major engine oil leaks, like rusted out oil pans or lots of oil leaking where the motor meets the transmission, because that's called the rear main bearing seal, and that's the hardest and most expensive one to change. Some vehicles involve removing the motor and transmission, or just the transmission to do that. While you're under here, look at the frame and everything to see it hasn't driven over curbs and rocks and all scuffed up and damaged. And then take a close look all underneath for how rusty the gas lines are, the brake lines are, how rusty the gas tank is. If it's got a metal gas tank, whether it's got damp spots where it's sweating and leaking. Check the exhaust system, rust and holes or parts replaced. Make sure it still has a catalytic converter on it, or down the line someone's going to make you put one on. See that it has a spare tire. Check to see if the rear window wiper works, if it has one. Check the emergency brake. Horn. Also check to see how the tunage plays. Sweet. If it's got air conditioning, check that too. If while the air conditioning is on and the compressor down below there, the clutch is clicking off and on fairly frequently, that means it's low on Freon. If it doesn't turn on at all, it means it's probably got no Freon, because there's a switch that doesn't allow it to turn on when there's no Freon. Of course, look for leaks on the engine. Could be bad gaskets or seals. Ask when the timing belt's been changed, if that's appropriate, or that engine has one. Check to see that the driver's seat slides back and forth. If it's jammed, that often happens because the car was in an accident and the mechanism is broken. See that there's no damage around the keyhole or outside door locks, meaning the vehicle could have been stolen and recovered. Now check the paperwork, like the ownership or title. You want to be sure it wasn't a crash, recovered, and repaired vehicle, one that was bought from an auto records or from an insurance company and fixed up. That's called a branded vehicle, and it should be mentioned that it's branded, which means it has a lower value because the vehicle was a total write-off.